Single people, families, and businesses are moving in droves to Texas. The economy is great, the cost of living is low, and we have some of the friendliest people in the country. However, with that being said, Texas isn't for everyone, and in this video, we're going to discuss why you might not want to move to Texas, and we're getting after it right now.
Knowing your body feels so tired to get out of bed, you put your heart on a letter to chase it away.
As you can see, I'm not in Texas anymore. I just landed, and quite often I like to get out of town for this very reason, and that is Texas is very flat. The landscape is kind of boring. There's not much to look at, so anytime I get a chance to get a little break, I love to go to LA or San Diego. Currently, as you can see the skyline behind me, I'm in Miami. Absolutely love Miami because of the beach, the palm trees. So if you enjoy the outdoors, you like going in the mountains, you like skiing, you love breathtaking views, Texas really isn't going to offer that unless you're in the hill country, and that's pushing it at best. In addition to that, we do have the Gulf of Mexico, Galveston. Guys, the wind is blowing tremendously, so I hope you can hear me. However, one of the reasons you might not want to move to Texas is the landscape. Okay, so moving on to the second issue in regards to moving to Texas. To me, it's no big deal. However, depending on where you're coming from, it might be a little bit of a culture shock, and that is the Western attire. Pretty much on a daily basis, you'll see people wearing big cowboy hats, giant belt buckles, and massive cowboy boots. So that's a way of life in Texas. We embrace the Western culture. So depending on where you're from, that might be a little bit of a shock to you. Right now, I'm in the Design District in Miami. I'm at the Fendi Cafe, about to have a nice quick bite to eat. And looking around here, there's a lot of people wearing designer clothing, and I have no idea because I don't dress up. As y'all guys can see me pretty much in a t-shirt and shorts on a daily basis. However, I'm pretty certain if I was to sit here all day, I probably would not see one person walking through this walkway wearing cowboy hat, big belt buckle, and big boots. So depending on where you're from, you might not be used to that Western attire that we see on a daily basis. For those that watch my YouTube channel, you already know that my diet consists of mainly Mexican food, chips and salsa, with an occasional margarita. Here in Miami, or at least at the Fendi Cafe, there aren't a lot of options in regards to food, unless you want some healthy food, which I guess isn't all bad, and that's going to lead into my next topic. Everything is bigger in Texas, and that includes its people. I hate to say it, but I'm just gonna keep it 100 like I always do on our real estate channel. Texas has an issue with obesity. In 2019, nearly 35% of all Texans were considered obese, which is among the highest in the United States. As of 2018, the obesity rate for 10 to 17-year-old children is 16%, and among the high school students, these numbers have increased significantly. Among the U.S. states, Texas ranks 5th when it comes to obesity rates among high school students. Let's go ahead and get this one out of the way right now. If you don't like guns, you might as well not bother coming to Texas, because in Texas, most people have more guns than they do family members. So you might as well get used to seeing people with handguns, rifles, whatever the case is. I actually have a client right now that is looking for acreage right outside of Dallas, and one of his main criteria was, I want a gun range on the land built and ready to go. And because he hired the very best team in the state of Texas, we found several options for him, and hopefully we're gonna get something under contract here in the next couple of days. You'll also find that open carry is quite common here, especially in the rural areas. The people here are fiercely independent and unafraid to say so. If you appreciate hunting, sport shooting, and what the Second Amendment represents, then you will love it here. If the presence of guns make you feel uncomfortable, then Texas might not be the best option for you. So another reason you might not want to move to Texas is the weather. During the summer, it gets extremely hot and humid. So if you're hot-natured like myself, it might not be the ideal environment for you and your family. I've lived in Texas my entire life, and I can assure you, to this day, I still can't deal with the heat, especially during August. That's why I'll plan trips to get out of town, because I can't deal with the heat. It's not that I'm running away from family or friends or my city, it's that I'm trying to escape the heat. In addition to that, if you're into winter sports and you like to snow ski, snowboard, you like hiking in the mountains and you enjoy the cooler weather, Texas is definitely not going to offer that. So if you're extremely hot-natured or you just don't like the sun, Texas is not going to be the ideal location for you. Moving on to the next reason, and that's aggressive drivers. So if you're not ready to speed, cut people off, you might just want to go ahead and catch an Uber or use public transportation. A lot of the people in Texas, mainly Houston and Dallas and Austin, are very aggressive. The top limit on the highway is 85 miles per hour, and I assure you, if you're only driving 85, you will be passed up as if you were doing 35. So, might consider that when moving to Texas. If you're not in a hurry or you're not an aggressive driver, just something to think about. One of the most significant disadvantages of living in the Lone Star State is healthcare. If you live in a rural area, you might have to drive 50 miles to reach your closest provider. So, depending on where you live, that could be a big issue. Obviously, if you live in the big metro areas such as San Antonio, Austin, DFW, or Houston, you won't have that issue. However, if you plan on living out in the country, or as I like to call it, the sticks, it might be an issue to this day. I have a lot of family members in West Texas, East Texas that live far away from cities, and God forbid if they ever get sick or there's some health concerns, it's going to be a long drive to get emergency help. So, something that you might want to take into consideration. So even worse than the weather is Texas' higher than average property tax rates. Although you will not face an income tax when moving to Texas, there are high property taxes to consider before you decide to purchase a home. As you can see, I'm no longer in Miami. I made it back home to the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. As much fun as I have when I go to Miami, LA, Chicago, or around the world, I assure you, I am extremely happy when I get back to the DFW Metroplex. It's really hard to beat North Texas. However, this is not the topic of the video. We're discussing on why you might not want to move to Texas. And here's a great example. I'm home. It's been raining since I've been gone nonstop. I don't know if the circuit breaker broke or what have you. However, my AC downstairs is not working. And I'm telling you, I am burning up. Thank God we have an AC for the upstairs. But this is a prime example of why sometimes I get very frustrated during the summer. I looked at the thermostat, I believe it was around 85, 88 degrees. It's in the morning. So last night I had to sleep upstairs. Anyway, heat, as we covered. Let's move on. Moving on to number 9, and that is people are very surprised at how openly we discuss God. You could be at Cheddar's, at Mi Cocina, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and it is not shocking to see the table next door having prayer time, having quiet time with their family, holding hands as they bless their meal. To me, this is something that I've seen, that I embrace, that I've done with my family and friends since as long as I can remember. So, to me, it's not shocking. However, depending on where you move from, that might be a little bit surprising. In addition to that, the size of these mega churches. I've had clients tell me, man, Richard, was that a church we just drove by? I'm like, yes, they're massive. I'm not saying it's good, bad, or indifferent. One thing that you guys will always know, I never discuss religion or politics. So in some of these comments, if I don't reply, and I try to reply to every comment, I don't touch those things because people don't want to hear my opinion on certain things. So I'm going to leave it alone and just discuss the topic at hand, and that's living in Texas and real estate. So a lot of times people are very, very surprised at the size of these mega churches. For instance, Lakewood in Houston is literally, or was, a football stadium. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was or was it a baseball stadium? I'm not sure, but it was a stadium nonetheless. That's how massive some of these churches can be. So that could be a little bit of a shocker to you, depending on what part of the country you came from. Nevertheless, whether you've been around it or not, you're going to be embraced in Texas by the overwhelming majority of people regardless. Now, let's move on to our last topic. So pretty much you can find me at this gym every day of the week. But moving on to why you might not want to move to Texas, and that is the size of Texas, which is massive. You can drive from one end of the state to the other, and I believe it's going to be at least a 10 to 12 hour drive. If you're in town and you're trying to get from Dallas to Fort Worth or one side of Houston to the other, you're probably looking at an easily over an hour drive. So when they say everything is bigger in Texas, that is an absolute fact. Hopefully I don't get ran over by my kids. But depending on how you look at it, that's a massive con if you're trying to get around or you have to drive for work. Also, because we're growing so fast, the traffic is horrible. So that just comes with growth, a lot of construction. There's cars all over the highways. And as we covered earlier, there's a lot of aggressive drivers as well. So the state is massive, and it could be good or bad depending on how you look at it. I hope you received some value from this video. If you're thinking about moving to the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex or throughout the state of Texas, don't hesitate to give us a call. We would be happy to assist you with your next real estate transaction. And as always, we'll see you on the next video.